Hey, what is up? Welcome back, Design Squad. It's really good to see that so many of you find these reviews for portfolios so useful, and today I have another one. And as you can see on my screen, I have this portfolio by Andre. He's a UX, UI, and product designer. So you're saying I create an improved, concise, and memorable experience for users, fixed with people, with beautiful and user-centric products. This is a really good intro, and I like that you crossed out users because there's only one other industry which has users in it, and I don't even need to mention what it is. At some point we're all gonna need to steer away from user experience and probably just call it human experience, if you ask me, especially headed towards AI and machine learning ridden world. Anyhow, he's in London, Madrid, Barcelona, so meaning this is where he's looking for a job, I guess, and then you have a call to action to go forward. He has projects, his CV, I guess, some about me, has some sort of introduction, some photos about other bits. It adds a bit more personal touch. Also very important because it makes you a holistic person if you expose yourself to different challenges and not just design. But the hiring manager is only gonna assess the skill sets, the case studies, the portfolio. That's the most important bit. Everything else is almost adding extra touches. But let's dive into projects. That's the most important bit. 4 different cases here. One is a website redesign. There is a couple of apps. There is almost like a dashboard, like a, I guess, employee administration tool or management tool of sorts. If we go to other projects, as you can see what he does uniquely, which is quite uncommon in other portfolios, he uses the case studies to show the depth of his approach, but he also shows that, hey, I'm also capable to do so much more. And as long as you don't have any NDAs, and this is, you can actually display, this is a really good idea to just show that you can do much more than, just what you are actually portraying, so that a potential employer, a hiring manager, can relate it to it more. For example, the CRM CDO, which is basically company management tool, the dashboard, the CRM itself. And as you can see, he had this before, which was, I guess, spreadsheets and very simple tool, and then made this smart, intuitive type of thing. I want to see the case study for this, for example. Myself, where I'm at, I'm looking for a complex apps. Majority of employers might not, but I would, and that's where I would see, maybe he actually did something cool here from UX standpoint. I might then have a chat with him just because there might be some potential, even if he doesn't make a case study on it. So it's quite smart from Andres to include other cases. That's my point here. But if we go to one of a project, and I guess the first one is the one I'm gonna dig deep the most, because that should be like a champion case anyways. As you can see, it's a foodable, which is basically a fridge in your pocket, a one-stop easy recipe generator and waste management system. He describes what it is and what sort of issues it addresses in a high level. So this is perfect example of an introduction, which is not too wordy, but also takes me on a journey to display more stuff and tells me a better story. He says what company it is, the project duration, who were the team members and what did they do. So he actually lists the people himself, gives some credit, and then showcases the final product. He splits the problem into the business goals. So for example, here is you can see the targets, which is getting fundraising, basically championing and being a primary case, I guess, for that service in the market, expanding beyond UK. And then you have some design targets and goals, which is basically from user perspective, because he's championing user experience when he described. That's what I always recommend designers to understand, that the business goals are quite different from user goals. It's up to you to drive that conversation and try to marry those. You are a user advocate, but you should care about business outcome as much as a UX designer. So he then goes into challenge and what was that? I don't even know if this is a need to do a separate challenge from the the problem and goals. I would just unify it. He goes through a process, which is great because he describes basically the key stages, which is something I always again recommend people to do, to introduce what was your approach on a high level, what did you do from there. One thing what I would improve here is also like the weight of the research. So as you can see, he split it into 2 sections, research 1, research 2. In reality, the storyboarding, new user flows, I guess, or maybe it's old, this is a question, but everything what you come up for new is really the ideation, because you come up, you take that research and you transform it, synthesize it. So I would probably expand on this maybe in a future projects. Usually the definition stage is really part of the ideation, so I would maybe clarify it a little bit of where you started. Perhaps what you mean by definition is a bit different. What I would expect would say something like opportunity outline or stakeholder workshops, business requirement, like discovery could be a good statement, because I would imagine you started from nothing and then you arrived at something based on your problem and goal. You go into personas. It's very simple. The only thing what I would make it clear is separating their goals, their needs, their challenges, some demographic into separate areas. You made it a bullet point list, which is great, but for me, as someone who has 2 minutes to view this, I would like for you to clearly just add 3 red bullet points saying pain points, bam, bam, bam. It's done. I know exactly what you're after. You did some competitive analysis. You did some UX audit, which is, I guess, a review, some heuristic analysis of what there was, visual research, storyboarding, and that's where the nuance is. But this is where the issue is, I think, which is very typical in UX UI work, which is basically you say you do UX, but also UI. But in this case, the UI work outweighs your UX because you jumped into conclusions way too soon in this case. To even come up with a new flow, I would expect to see the old flow. You can see you did personas immediately, point of view. So I would expect you to expand on that, to tell me as is journey with all the peripherals. How do your users, that user groups, your personas engage with the current tool? How do they exit? What do they do with it? So I know as a hiring manager that you understood what's there more so than just solving an issue and just quickly ideating and experimenting, which is also fine. But if there's UX, you need to invest a lot in UX research as well. You have a strong understanding of UX instead of just jumping into solutioning, because then it becomes more UI design than UX, and then you might lose a potential employer who might care that you know how to do user research, basically. So personas are great, experience maps, the journey maps, existing analysis of different systems. A blueprint or 2 could help you out as well, depends what's most appropriate. UX review of existing tool is great, but the surrounding peripherals are as important as the digital experience itself, if not more important. And so you did some information architecture, you wireframed it, went into high fidelity mockups, which is great. I like the look and feel, looks pretty good. And as you can see, you have a lot of different patterns. That's all great. As long as it looks, up to date, it looks like you know what you're doing. That should be good enough. One thing which stood out again is this guideline. I don't know if it's really necessary. I understand that you might be proud of branding and things of that nature, but branding within UX is so small where I would question how much you're spending on this instead of a user research portraying it. You could even skip that altogether because you include it in this, then all that guideline work becomes redundant unless you came up with a design system and you're proud of it. But other than that, as you can see, going into deep with UI assets, library, things of that nature might not be relevant as much for UX work. Research is number 1, which might then triple you if you apply for, let's say, UX role. And then you summarize the final thoughts, which I would probably split it into different outcomes, because you talk about the client, you talk that the app is on Apple and Google Store, add those links. You can even, quote the quantitative insights, how many users maybe they got extra from that redesign, what was the business outcome, did it answer really what you put there in the first, because you want to complete that story, and to what extent. The user testing, which you should be doing anyways before you launch anything or go into production either way. So you could quote that too. If you haven't done that, I would question why haven't you done that, because you could and you should. And then you could have, your user outcomes, your business outcomes. If all of it is great, then that's superb. If you don't have enough information about it because you might exit it way too soon, well, predicted outcomes is also important, because you can tell that, hey, maybe in the next year the user base is projected to expand twice. You don't have to fake it, but the more you provide, the better it is. It's unclear what's next for it, and that's super important. So I would expand on this, because it's way more important than branding, let's say, or picking colors. It's the purpose. It's what did you achieve with it? What was the end result? It's way, way more important than the assets. And same applies for other case studies. I really quickly went through it, and I think it's great. I think you're using similar approach, but again, you could invest more into the UX rather than UI, branding, visual design, then you would become a much stronger candidate in the market. Through UX, user research driven positions, and hiring managers would definitely benefit from having you on board and kind of helping them out solve those issues if you can portray it in a portfolio. For everyone else, if you like this video, give a like, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment down below what you think about it, and on that note, I'll see you next time.